you're having a fantastic day. In today's episode, I would love to share with you the pattern of this quilt that I just made. It is made out of 10 houses block, and the measurement of this house unit is about 12.5 by 10 inches. And at the center here also there are flying geese. I call this 4 flying geese because these are actually 2 half square triangles that I joined together, and each of these triangles were actually taken from the leftover of making these flying geese. Also, feel free to experiment with your fabric choice, different color palette, work it out with your own taste, and yeah, make this quilt totally yours. So we're gonna get started soon. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and your project turned out great. As always, if you have any question, let me know in the comment down below, and consider subscribing to this channel. I post fun sewing and quilting project. So without further ado, let's get started. First, we're gonna make the roof of the house. So for this, you're gonna need to prepare a rectangle measuring 10.5 by 5.5 inch out of your print fabric, and 2 5.5 inch squares out of your light solid fabric. I'm using off-white color here. Now you want to take one of the square and lay that on either of the side of the rectangle, just like so, right side together, and you want to make sure that all the edges are aligned. Now we're going to draw a line from this corner to that corner, so go ahead and take your fabric marker and your ruler and draw a diagonal line. Secure that in place with a pin, and then you're gonna go ahead and sew right on that line. Alright, so once you've done sewing, we're going to cut off the corner edge here. And when you cut this, you want to make sure to leave about 1/4 inch of fabric from the seam line. So I'm going to take my ruler here and position that 1/4 inch away from the seam line, and then trim that off with a rotary cutter. You want to set aside these leftover triangles. Now open this up, finger press that a little bit, and then you want to go ahead and give this a quick press. To minimize stretching of fabric or distorting it, I recommend not to use the steam, and simply give this a quick tap. Now you want to work the same way with the other square. So lay that on the other side of the rectangle, aligning all the edges. Then go ahead and draw the line there. Draw the line with your fabric marker and secure that in place with a pin, and go ahead and sew on that line. Again, you want to trim the edge off a 1/4 inch away from the seam line. Set those leftover triangles aside. Then go ahead and give that a quick press. And now you've got one flying goose. We're going to square this one up to get the measurement of 10 inch by 5 inch. First, we're going to make sure that we will have a 1/4 inch of seam allowance there. Now you want to find the 1/4 inch line of your ruler and line that up with the very point of that triangle on the center there. And if there is any extra fabric, you want to go ahead and trim that with your rotary cutter, just to make sure that you have straight edges. Now you're going to work on the other side. So I'm going to use the lines on my cutting mat as the gauge here and measure 5 inch. And I'm gonna trim off whatever excess with my rotary cutter. Now we're going to straighten up the sides, so I center my block here, and I've got about 1/4 inch extra from the sides, so I'm going to trim this off to make sure that I get 10 inch wide block. I know this may seem like a lot of work, but just the way it is when you work with flying goose block is to make the block a slight bigger than the size that we actually intended to, and then square it up, because it's kind of hard to play precise with this kind of block since we are working with bias sewing, so your fabric can easily get stretched or distorted. So it's a lot easier when we have a slight bigger block to fix the mistake. Now you want to go ahead and double check if you got the correct measurement. And that's it. Now you've got yourself a house roof. Now we're gonna go ahead and work on the lower part of the house and the door as well. So you need to cut 3 rectangles for the body of the house and cut one 2.5 inch by 8 inch of rectangle, one 3.5 by 2.5 inch of rectangle, one 8 by 5 inch of rectangle, and one 3.5 by 6 inch of rectangle for the door. Now we're gonna sew these pieces together. So starting with this rectangle here with the door. Of course, you want to sew this with 1/4 inch of seam allowance. And go ahead and press the seam open. Now we're gonna sew this one. Now that we've sewn the house, we're going to take the roof and then lay this right side together, and we're going to sew with 1/4 inch of seam allowance. Now we've got one house block ready to go. Now go ahead and make 9 more of these, and feel free to experiment with your fabric choice. Ideally, if you choose darker color for your roof, you may want to choose lighter color for your house and for the door as well. But really, there's no right or wrong, so just have fun with your fabric choice. So here I've already got 10 house blocks ready to go. I chose spring theme color palette. It's simply because of the season. Alright, so now we're gonna work on these triangle scraps left over from making the flying geese for the house roof. You should get 20 pairs of these. Now you want to sew each pair right side together with 1/4 inch of seam allowance. Then go ahead and press the seams open. Then you want to go ahead and trim those bunny ears off. Then you want to end up with 20 pieces of half square triangles blocks measuring approximately 4 3/4 inch. Now you want to take 2 of these, ideally with contrasting print color, just like these two. So we're going to match the print side in order to create that flying goose look. So you're gonna lay these right side together. Then we're gonna go ahead and sew right from this edge 1/4 inch of seam allowance. And once you've done sewing this, go ahead and press the seams open. Now we're going to square this up to the size 9 by 4.5 inch. And we're gonna do this pretty much the same way when we did the roof of the house. And you're gonna end up with 10 of these flying geese. Now from your background fabric, cut one 8 by 9 inch rectangle. Then you want to cut some 2.5 inch strips for the sashing and the borders. The measurements will be shown on the screen here, or you can also see on the description box down below. And we're gonna have 3 layers of border here, so these are gonna be my second border. I chose off-white color for that, and we'll also have the third border, but I forgot to take the footage of the fabric, but I'll show you later when we're piecing. Since we're going to work with long strips, you may want to join 2 strips together. So cross your fabric right side together, then draw a diagonal line on the upper corner there. Secure that in place with a pin, and then go ahead and sew on the line. Once you've done that, trim the extra fabric with a scissor 1/4 inch away from the seam, and voila, you've joined your fabric together. You may go ahead and press the seams open now. This is basically the same method as making the binding strips. Lay your blocks with your sashings and the borders as well, just like shown here. You want to have 5 house blocks on the first row. On the second row here, you will have 5 flying geese, and then your center block, and then the rest of the flying geese after that, and 5 house blocks on the third row, and of course your sashings and the borders as well. I haven't put the third border here just for easier filming, but we'll work on that later. Alright, so now we're gonna start piecing the first row. So you wanna try your best to match the seam here, so I'm going to nest these seams together and place a pin to secure that in place. And go ahead and sew with 1/4 inch of seam allowance. And once you've done that, go ahead and press the seams open. Alright, so now that the first row already sewn together, we're going to sew the second row. I don't know if you notice here, but I actually changed the direction of the geese. So I was initially putting them in the same direction, but then I realized it's more interesting if the other one is facing the opposite direction. So now we're gonna start piecing these first 5 geese together. And again, you want to match the seams on the center here. Use a pin to secure that in place. Then sew with 1/4 inch of seam allowance. Now that all the blocks are sewn, we're going to work on the borders and sashing as well. So start off from the top first border here. You want to go ahead and sew this with 1/4 inch of seam allowance. Now we're gonna work on the second border here. For this one, you're gonna start off from the side. Alright, so once you've sewn the second border, now we're gonna work on the third border. So as you can see here, I use 2 different kind of fabric for the sides and the top and the bottom, and these fabrics were also used on some of the blocks here. You may also use one type of fabric if you wish to. Now we're gonna start sewing from the side here. Alright, so once you've got your quilt top ready to go, go ahead and sandwich that with quilt batting and backing. My backing is kind of like the neutral color backing, and for the batting I use cotton batting from Warm Company, and I basted it pretty much using the basting spray because that's the method that actually works the best for me. But you can also pin baste it or do the combination of the two, and once you've done that, go ahead and quilt this. You can do free motion quilting or walking foot quilting or hand quilting in any design that you like. So I quilt mine with walking foot because this is a method that I can do the best, and my machine seems to take this method better than the free motion quilting, maybe because it's a standard sewing machine. I do some straight lines just following the shape of the block and the triangles, and lots of pivoting, but I kinda enjoy that because not only I got a free arm exercise, also I get to cuddle with my quilt, so it's kind of fun. And I bind my quilt using the decorative stitches method. This is the method that works best for me. It's less time consuming and it's kind of fun to see the sewing machine creating those pretty stitches. However, you want to make sure you have extra bobbin thread if you use this method. I actually have the full tutorial on how to bind your quilt using decorative stitches. I will link that down below in the description box. And that's all I have for you today, guys. Thumbs up if you like this tutorial, and I shall see you next time with another fun sewing project. Goodbye!